So yeah, there. Okay, thank you. So good to see you all this morning. Oh, I forgot to turn on my other light. I got up. That was one of the things I was going to do. There we go. So good to see you. There will be a couple more people coming. A couple of people are off with some other duties, but we may see them later, depends. So let's begin. Sunny, would you like to put up the prayers? So it's good to think here, of the meaning, so that when you recite these words in the future, automatically comes up some kind of feeling because you have had some remembering consciousness of what it means to go for refuge. So you know what it means to go to refuge. Two main causes: distress or fear of cyclic existence, and faith in the triple gem, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, as being capable of, helping you escape from that suffering. We say the absolute minimum, even if you don't have faith, is to have some kind of hope, and kind of testing out, like you go to the bathtub that you're not quite sure the water is too hot or too cold. You just put your toe in, and then you say, oh, that's a little bit. You put your foot in, so you might get more involved. You have to have at least hope, but generally the causes are said to be faith. So faith that the Buddha, his teachings, the Dharma, realizations of that's the real refuge. And the Sangha, which help you take the medicine of the Dharma, can help you. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all migrating beings. Or here it just says migrating beings, Drola Penche. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Supreme Assembly means the Bodhisattva Sangha, not just the general Shravaka and Pratika Buddha Assembly or Sangha. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all migrators. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all migrators. And then short mandala, which you put up back again. Sort of in a sense, request for the teachings. By offering this ground anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy such a pure realm. So what that means is you imagine the actual physical world that we inhabit, however you think of Mount Meru. 4 continents sometimes can mean the southern continent being the earth. In old mythology and Hinduism, the southern continent, Jambudvipa, was India, and Mount Meru were around, the Himalayas. But, later we almost think of the earth as being the southern continent, maybe some of the other close planets as being some of the other continents. And you visualize that multiplied many, many times. Imagine as many world systems as you can, all through the power of your visualization, transformed into pure lands and offered to the Buddha. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please send down, release a rain of vast and profound Dharma. So that means the method side, the vast side, and the profound, meaning the side of the teachings about wisdom, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay, thank you. So good to see you. We'll have a few. Oh, looks like a couple of people are showing up. Jennifer is. I can't see everyone. I wish we could figure this out. I can't see the full extent of everyone here. Is it? Okay. I don't know why this happens. Sunny, it's not possible to put the entire picture view of the people up there.
Okay, so I'm changing my view on my screen. I cannot change your view, Venerable. If you go to the upper right-hand corner, you'll see view.
I know that, but it's not working. This is what's happened before.
Right.
Can you put the group view on?
Certainly. Okay, so it's now group view on my screen.
Okay.
Do you have, but Venerable, you do not have the group view?
No, I don't. I just have myself as the center. It's hard then to scroll through all the people I'd like to see. Oh, that's not me.
Somebody's dog.
Someone's dog. Okay.
I'm so sorry. Does anybody else in the class have any ideas on how to get a good, how Venerable can get a view of the gallery?
Are you under the view? Are you in full screen?
Yes, I'm in full screen.
Yeah, it behaves differently under full screen. I've had this problem myself. It behaves differently, and I have to get out of it and just go back to where I have the three options: speaker, gallery, and full screen. But if I go into
that was helpful. That was helpful. That worked. Okay, that's helpful. Thanks for someone who knew how to do that. Okay, so we're going to do a very short meditation now as a motivation. The prayers, in theory, should be sufficient if you have meditated on the meaning of those prayers. But because we may not have that, what we want to try to do is set up a motivation to listen to the teachings, which is a bodhicitta motivation. Because in doing so, we will accumulate the greatest amount of merit. Okay, so sit comfortably, spine erect. Focus on your breathing. Pay attention to that. And once you've recognized it, place your mindfulness on that. The different mental factors, attention and mindfulness. Being mindful of breathing in, breathing out to the exclusion of all other thoughts. Where's my phone? Even if you are in a state where you don't seem to have other thoughts, you may have the sense of darkness. because your eyes are partially closed or not. That's an appearance to your mental consciousness. So even let go of that. Let go of the sense of your body, the sense of your self as a meditator. And increase the continuity so that even when the breath changes direction, you're still aware of that, watching the point where it changes direction. And following one breath up your nostrils as though it goes to the crown of your head, to your throat, to your heart chakra. Place your attention near there and just watch the mental consciousness. Recognize all the appearances and thoughts are just like clouds in the otherwise clear light nature of your mind, the conventional clear light nature of your mind. That's what allows them to appear. Sequentially try to take attention away from the cloud-like thoughts and place it instead on the clarity of the mind within which they're arising. Even where the thoughts are, even the very location of the thoughts, so that as you take your attention away from them, they begin to become more transparent, maybe disappear for a time. When you get a glimpse of this clarity, kind of like a vastness, a vast expanse, try to hold it single-pointedly. What you're trying to do is develop a mental image of the clear light nature of the mind. Your body is appearing within that clear light nature. Let go of your attention to the body and focus on the subjective clear light nature within which it's arising. Same with the sense of self. Letting go of the appearance of yourself is not a meditation on selflessness, although it does have some similar attributes. This is our developmental Buddha nature. This conventional clear light nature of the mind. This allows us to develop good qualities and eliminate faults. And the fact that we can recognize it now and be inspired to do that, to eliminate faults and develop good qualities, is a result of us having this auspicious moment that the Tibetans call the life of leisure and endowment, which we have created the karma for in previous lives. And it has the two great meanings of being able to achieve with a life like this, enlightenment or liberation. Or at least in the minimum to develop realizations, create virtuous karma, that in future lives we can again encounter perfect human rebirths. Why are we doing this? Not simply for ourselves to achieve liberation, nor simply to enjoy the bliss of achieving enlightenment for ourselves alone, but knowing that all living beings are in the exact same situation, caught in the ocean of cyclic existence. Most not having a refuge, feeling compassion for them and empathy for them, having recognized all of them as having been kind to us numberless times in the past as our mothers and as friends, as companions, and even deeper, realizing our equality with them, that our sense of working for our own welfare right now is polluted by our grasping to a self-identity, to a self of persons, inherently existent self, recognizing that we are not inherently existent, that our mind is capable of imputing who we are on the entirety of sentient beings. They are our limbs, so to speak. You know, when they suffer, we can feel unease, wanting them to be free. To achieve our ultimate goal of freedom from suffering and the goal of others, our ability to lead them out of cyclic existence, we need to achieve enlightenment, not just the nirvana of the Buddha's lesser teachings. To do so, we need an accumulation of merit and wisdom. And thinking that as the subject matter of the talks as we're studying the illumination of the intent, is the development of wisdom, and that by listening to the teachings with a bodhicitta motivation, we will accumulate a vast accumulation of merit. Try to motivate for the teaching today, talk today. I'm going to listen, contemplate, and meditate with the end goal, with the intention of achieving enlightenment, so that I can, without favoritism or disfavor, I can help all sentient beings equally, lead them out of suffering into everlasting happiness. We're going to listen to the teachings in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. That's my goal today. That's my goal in the future. See if you can leave an imprint in your mind that wherever we're born in the future, we'll have that instinctual goal, not just to become famous or rich or have pleasure of the lifetime, but the goal of our final goal of achieving enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And then relax, bring your attention back to the present. Good to see many of you. Sarvash, Rachel, Venerable Tendrin, Venerable Palmo is there. Jennifer somehow is here, even though she's in Washington. So, any questions about the meditation or questions from last time? Snehi, Sister Snehi's here. Don, any questions? Don Erickson? Isaacson? No? No question. Pardon? No question. Okay. Sean has a question or comment, observation.
So when you, in meditation, if you have this view that there's like, I mean, we tend to have this view that there's an inner side of us that other people don't observe, where we can watch our thoughts and things, but they can't observe that. But is that still, I mean, it feels like that's still grasping at an inherent self that's like somehow this observer watching.
Right. Well, there's no assurance that others can't see your thoughts. You know, there could be some bodhisattvas or Buddhas in our class who know transparently what Sean is thinking, know transparently what I'm thinking. You know, what's appearing to my mind and how I'm addressing it. That's possible. But yeah, so when you're watching your mind, you know, it appears to us as being inherently existent. So what we're meditating on here is the conventional clear light nature of the mind. And eventually, say, even if you're visualizing the Buddha as an object of shamatha, about an object of calm abiding, right? The Buddha is appearing to your mind as inherently existing, unless you're meditating on the emptiness of the Buddha. So all of these observations of our mind, you can have cognizance of yourself as an observer, but when we're trying to develop tranquil abiding, you try to eliminate the difference between the observed object, like say the Buddha, and your mind as an observer. That's how there's kind of that duality right now. So you try to, if you have shamatha, that kind of duality is eliminated. In fact, it's coming today a little later in the discourse when we talked about non-dual awareness. One of the causes of of becoming a bodhisattva, when we talked about from what are the bodhisattvas born, right? They're born from great compassion, non-dual awareness, and bodhicitta. Snehi, do you remember what that non-dual awareness meant? Was that the observer and the object are merged?
I thought it was not falling into the two extremes.
Right. So that non-dual is different. There is another non-duality that we're going to be talking about in the coming pages, which is related to what I'm explaining about Sean's question, that the observer and the object, the distinction between them, that apparent duality is erased because your mind is infused into the object. Like when you're meditating on the Buddha's body, you try to let go of yourself, the sense of yourself as being an observer, in your mind as though manifesting within the object. Okay. Rachel, you look like you have a question about that.
Is that done with the coarse mind, Venerable George, or is that only done with the subtle mind?
Well-
That non-dual aspect of the mind, can we actually do that with the coarse
Yeah,
mind
because
that we ordinarily?
it depends on what you mean by coarse mind. Generally, if you talk about coarse and subtle in terms of Tantra, it's definitely from the Bodhisattva point of view. We're not talking about the subtlemost mind that's actuated in Tantra, but it is a subtler mind than our, ordinary gross mind that we just let go everywhere. So it is a gross mind from the point of view of Tantra. It's not the subtle mind or the subtlemost mind or the subtle minds of the white, red, and black appearances, or the clear light, ultimate clear light nature of the mind. We're talking about gross mind in the Prajna Paramita path, right? We're still dealing with the gross mind. We don't, generally in the sutra path, you don't talk about the subtlemost mind. Okay? Okay? Okay. So let's dive in here. So last time we were talking about, let's see, did I write down the page number? Who knows the page number where we finished last time?
64.
64, so So I had talked about the taint of ignorance. This is from Lama Tsongkhapa's text. The taint of ignorance exists up until the seventh ground, right? So there's still ignorance. We're talking about the bodhisattvas now. We're not talking about the Hinayana practitioners, the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas. We're talking about the bodhisattva. On the first ground, on the path of seeing, they have ceased, they have abandoned some ignorance. They haven't abandoned all ignorance. They've abandoned, on the path of seeing, the first ground, they've abandoned the intellectually formed delusions. In particular, we talk about the three fetters, meaning the view of the transitory collection, intellectually formed view of the transitory collection, the view of wrong morality as supreme, and of the five views. When we talk about the six delusions, right? put the right number of fingers. There are 5 non-views. What are they? Do you remember? David, do you remember what the 5 non-view kleshas are? David, back please.
Not without looking them up. I'm sorry.
Oh, come on. Attachment, anger. What else? Ignorance,
Ignorance.
Jealousy and pride.
pride, but not jealousy. Jealousy comes in when you talk about Tantra. The
Doubt.
doubt, rooted doubt, afflicted doubt, right? And then there are the 6th klesha, root klesha, are the 5 views, 5 afflicted views, right? One of which is the view of the transitory collection. One of them is called the view of wrong moralities and rituals as being supreme. So these, on the path of seeing, the intellectually formed delusions are abandoned, so they don't exist at all. But you still have a whole lot of other delusions, other klesha that are there. So the taint of ignorance exists up until the 7th ground. So you still have, although you've eliminated some ignorance on the path of seeing, on the 1st ground, intellectually formed, on the 2nd ground, you've eliminated some more. By the time you finish the 7th ground, at the end of the 7th ground, in the meditative equipoise that acts as the juncture between the 7th and the 8th grounds, that meditative equipoise abandons the most subtle kinds of the delusions. And so there, here the text is, the taint of ignorance exists up until the 7th ground. Through the 7th ground, the stain of ignorance itself disappears for those on the 8th ground and up, as well as for the 2 types of arhats. So there's no pollution of the actual manifest delusions. They're gone. They're abandoned, never to return. Then the text says, since the pollutant ignorance has ceased, but they still possess the taints in the form of residual imprints of ignorance. They still have the, here what he's calling, what he's calling the residual imprints is marikpe bakcha. Marikpa means ignorance. Bakchak is what we usually say imprints. So they've eliminated the seeds of the delusions, also the potency of the delusions. Remember what we talked about last time? They're kind of 3 things. There's the klesha themselves when they're manifest. Let's say anger, attachment. Let's see, who can I ask? Doris, right now, are you angry?
Thankfully not, Venerable.
Okay, so anger is not manifest in your mind. Do you think you still have the seed of anger, the potential to get angry?
I know I have the seed.
Yeah, so when you've abandoned the delusions, you've also caused their seeds no longer to function. So those 2 parts are gone, but there's still the imprints of the delusion. So there are 3 things. There's the delusions themselves, well, not only delusions, let's say even positive mental factors. They're the actual mental factors themselves, and their seeds, the potentials, even when those mental factors are not present, even when anger is not present, or when faith is not present, you still have the potential for that. And then there's something deeper called the imprints. In Tibetan, we say bakchak. vasana, I think in Sanskrit. That means the imprints of that I likened to the smell of garlic within the bowl. You've taken out the garlic, but there's still an imprint within the mortar and pestle of the garlic there, the smell of that. So the stain of ignorance itself disappears for those on the 8th ground and up, as well as for the 2 types of arhats, since the pollutant ignorance, as well as its seeds, have ceased, true cessation, but they still possess the taints in the form of residual imprints of ignorance. Those imprints of ignorance are one of the factors that we call obstructions to omniscience, right? They are the existence of those imprints in our minds on the, let's say on the bodhisattvas on the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis before they achieve enlightenment are what cause them, when they arise from meditative equipoise, what causes conventional phenomena still to appear as inherently existent. Okay, so that's where we got last time. So the commentary continues, Lama Tsongkhapa continues. Again, when the commentary, and here Lama Tsongkhapa is referring to Chandrakirti's commentary on his karikas, right? The bhasham. There's the Madhyamaka Avatara karikas, the verses, and the Madhyamaka Avatara bhasham, the auto commentary that includes the verses but explains what the verses meant. So when the commentary refers to the first ground as that which bears the name of non-dual wisdom, okay, this is related to Sean's question earlier. It's saying that the gnosis is free of dualistically perceiving subject and object. You know, when Sean was saying, you know, it seems like the observer and you're observing something else. Or when I said the sense of yourself observing Shakyamuni Buddha's form, it is saying that the gnosis is free of dualistically perceiving subject as and object as separate from each other. It is not referring merely to the gnosis free of the 2 extremes that Snehi recalled the meaning of non-dualistic wisdom, one of the 3 causes of the Bodhisattva, right? This is talking about something more than that, because one has realized emptiness, free from the 2 extremes of inherent existence and non-existence. One has the correct view of emptiness, but now one has, a meditative equipoise that's a union of calm abiding and penetrative insight, shamatha and vipassana. So there's no sense of an observer different than the object itself. You are just there. There's no sense, I am realizing emptiness. Snehi, what do you think?
And well, George, that sentence, the gnosis is free of dualistically perceiving subject and object as separate from each other. It
Right.
just brought to my mind, the definition in Yogacara of their definition of emptiness. Does this have anything to do with that?
In general, no. I mean, there's a way of interpreting the Yogacara or Chittamatra system, is related here. But in general, it's not talking about, this is only talking about the correct view, which from Prasangika point of view, the Yogacara, Chittamatra is not correct view, right? Their view of emptiness. So one thing here, when it says as separate, the actual Tibetan, and reading this Jeffrey Hopkins' translation of that sentence, in his commentary, Jeffrey adds the word Chandrakirti, says that the first ground is called non-dualistic wisdom. This refers to the lack of a dualistic appearance of object and subject as if distant and cut off from each other. Thupten Jinpa doesn't, he just takes that, those two words, distant and cut off from each other. He just translates as separate. But the Tibetan word, the Tibetan phrase that he's translating as separate has two different words in it. One means as if distant, you know, they're not the same, and cut off. They're not, you know, they're definitely separate. Maybe separate sounds like cut off, but there's a sense of the lack of a dualistic appearance. So there's a lack of this object and subject seeming to be distant from each other and is cut off. It is not referring merely to a gnosis free of the two extremes. Okay, that's clear? Venerable Tendrin, what do you think? Yeah. Okay, so then the Lama Tsongkhapa mentions the master on numerous occasions in his writings speaks of wisdom and gnosis free of the cataract of wisdom. Right? Let's see where we're saying here. So here, when he's saying the master, who do you think he means? Nagarjuna, Buddha, Chandrakirti? Mikhail, who do you think mean?
Yeah, Chandrakirti, I think, yeah.
I mentioned three and you said yes.
Chandrakirti, yes.
Oh, Chandrakirti, okay, yeah. So in Jeffrey's translation of that, he does say the books of the master Chandrakirti contain many references to knowledge and wisdom free from the darkness of ignorance. So wisdom means prajna, gnosis means jnana. So when we talk about the cataract of ignorance, remember the actual Sanskrit word is timira, which means some kind of eye disease, as though it is polluting your vision. So if you're eating food, you might, if you have it very, very bad, you might think there are worms falling into the food or something like that, you know, the floaters. Therefore, when those who take ignorance and its imprints to be universal properties of awareness assert that when these two, ignorance and its imprints, right? So ignorance here includes both its seeds. Imprints is something much more subtle. The klesha, the ignorance, has its potential like a seed. And when the ignorance is gone, the potential also, once you've abandoned the ignorance, you've also abandoned the seed, but you haven't necessarily abandoned the imprint. Therefore, when those who take ignorance and its imprints to be universal properties of awareness, when they assert that when these two cease, gnosis also becomes no more. Gnosis too becomes no more, and maintain that such is the standpoint of this master, Chandrakirti, they are in fact committing a serious denigration, you know, denial, or, you know, denigrating the teacher, because the teacher's not saying that. He's not saying that when you abandon ignorance and its imprint, that you also abandon the mind, right? The mind still exists. Like in our meditation, when we talk about the clear light nature of the mind, if you have a state of mind in which there's no longer the appearance, there's no longer even the potential for the delusions to arise within that mind still exists. It's like the clear light, conventional clear light nature of the mind, right? The mind still exists. For this is similar to the view of the non-Buddhist Mimansakas. Mimansaka is the name of one non-Buddhist school, sort of the Vedic schools. Let's see here. Mimansaka, usually it can be translated as analyzer or ritualists. So the word chupa can mean to analyze or to perform, perform rituals, because they're Vedic schools. The Mimansakas claim that the Vedas, I'm reading from a definition from one of the tenet books. Mimansakas claim that the Vedas, you know what the Vedas are? Krista, do you know what the Vedas are? Survash, what are the Vedas? Do you know? You're Indian.
Yes, so Venerable George, the Vedas are ancient spiritual texts, tenets of the Hindu system.
Right. I say the Vedic system, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Vedas are the Vedas books. I was waiting to see what you were going to say. Are the Vedas books?
Yes, yes. The Vedas are actually books. Yes, they are texts.
Okay.
But at least, I mean, that's how I've always understood it, right? Rig Veda, etc.
Right. Yeah. You can find books called the Vedas of it, the Rig Veda and so forth. But for many of the Vedic schools, the Vedas are not only books, they are actually sound, sort of eternal, that have existed from the past, even before the books existed and so forth. So the Mimansakas claim that the Vedas are eternal sounds that are not created by persons and are hence permanent. That's not a unique, a lot of the other Vedic schools also say, when we talk about the Vedas are, they're sounds that have existed since beginningless time. The Buddhist schools consign the various non-Buddhist schools of Indian philosophy. So there's not only the Vedic schools, there's also the Jains and other, the different kinds of sadhus and so forth that had different philosophical schools. So basically the Indian schools, they were the Vedic schools, like the Samkhyas and Mimansaka and other, and then there were the Jains and others. So here it says, Buddhist schools consign the various non-Buddhist schools of Indian philosophy to one of the two extremes. So one of the two extremes, meaning the Samkhyas, which we may have talked about before, the Vaisheshika, that's not Vaibhasika, which is the Buddhist school, but Vaisheshika, the Jaina, Vedanta, Mimansaka, and Nyaya, which are the people who were the Vedic schools that were involved with logic and so forth, the great logicians, Hindu logicians. They fall into the extreme of permanence, that there's something really there. And the Charvaka, not the Shravaka. This is Shra is SV, right? SHV, Shravaka. This is Charvaka, Carvaka, which are kind of the nihilists. They fall into the extreme of nihilism. So the Mimansakas are saying that things really exist. The Charvakas, who are the ones that say karma doesn't exist and so forth, they were kind of like the eat, drink, and be happy, for tomorrow may never come. Okay, so what Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, that were those people who misinterpret Chandrakirti's explanation as meaning that when the delusions, when the klesha and their seeds, as well as the imprints are ceased, which would be what level of person would that be? Karen, what level of person would it be that has abandoned the delusions and their seeds as well as their imprints?
The 8th level, 8th through the 10th.
No, on the 8th, they've eliminated the delusions and their seeds. They still have the imprints. Who's also eliminated the imprints? The Buddha. Because when the Buddha, for the Buddha, nothing appears to him or her as though it's inherently existent. They've eliminated the obstructions to omniscience. So some people who try to interpret Chandrakirti, that would be, you know, some well, maybe some Indians also, but particularly in Tibet, Kargyu and Nyingma and so forth, might say that certain of them, not all of them, would say that when you achieve Buddhahood, the mind ceases. That's a denigration of Chandrakirti's view, because Chandrakirti says the Buddha, you know, the mind exists and knows these things, knows all phenomena. So this is an important point here. Therefore, when those who take ignorance and its imprints to be universal properties of awareness, we accept that. When they assert that when these two, ignorance and its imprints, cease, gnosis, wisdom, you know, the wisdom of a Buddha, also becomes no more, also is, you know, ceases, and maintain that such is the standpoint of Chandrakirti, they are in fact committing a serious denigration of Chandrakirti. That's not what he's saying, that the mind does not cease when the delusions and the imprints are ceased. For this is similar to the view of the non-Buddhist Mimansakas, who maintain that when the pollutants are exhausted, the mind too comes to cease. So that's an important thing to remember about the Mimansaka. They would say that although some other things still exist, they might say the person exists, the mind, they would say the mind ceases when its pollutions are gone. As though, say for instance, if you try to cease the blue color of lapis lazuli, can you have lapis lazuli in which you've ceased the blue color of lapis lazuli? Richard, what do you think? That's a no, right? So he's
Yes, that's a no.
That's a no. So it's almost as though, you know, from our point of view, if you talk about chemistry or metallurgy or something, the blue color of lapis lazuli comes about because of the juxtaposition of various atoms and molecules. If you were to eliminate that color, it would no longer be called lapis lazuli, right? It would be something else. It would be a hunk of rock of other molecules and chemicals and so forth. So the Mimansakas say that when you have ceased the pollutants of the mind, this is like the mind is just like one with those pollutants. You can't separate those pollutants from the mind. If you've ceased the pollutants, the mind ceases. Sarvash, what do you think? You there?
So Venerable George, I think that are you asking me what?
Well, you have your hand up. I don't know if you.
Yeah. I'll tell you. So I did have my hand up but it's not. It does not relate to the Mimansaka position. But it relates to something that you did talk about previously.
Okay, what's your thought?
So if I zoom out and look at the path from starting from the path of seeing all the way up to Buddhahood, you've got essentially two problems. One is not understanding the view of emptiness, which is being, thinking about a permanent, unitary, independent self. And the second problem is duality.
You said from the path of seeing up to Buddhahood. So the path of seeing, you don't have any doubts about permanent, partless, independent person. That's long gone.
Okay, but that's only when you're in meditative equipoise, right?
No, even, let's say, the view of a permanent, partless, independent person is an intellectually formed delusion, right? So on the path of seeing, that has ceased, along with even the intellectually formed view of the transitory collection, the intellectually formed delusions, other kinds of delusions that fuel those delusions. All of those are abandoned at that point. You know clearly on the path of seeing, well, let's say during the meditative equipoise on the path of seeing, you don't think of any of these things. All that's appearing to your mind is emptiness, right?
But in post-meditation,
yeah, on the liberated path, you know these things, and in post-meditation, you no longer have any doubts about these things. Like if someone were to tell you, Sarvash, the moon is made of Kit Kat bars or blue cheese or something like that. Do you believe that?
no.
No. You don't even have to have been an astronaut that went to the moon. That's kind of like this, some kind of intellectually formed, kind of ignorance, right? So you have that kind of certainty on the path of seeing that there is no person as described by certain Vedic schools, that the person is permanent, partless, and independent. That's completely excised from your mind. That's abandoned. Okay, you may not even have had that delusion, but if you did have that intellectually formed delusion, it is gone, and you will never fall prey to it again.
Okay, so say you are on, as you travel from the first bhumi all the way up to the 10th or 11th, in post meditation,
right,
is the problem only duality, or because my understanding was that, you see, Venerable George, my understanding was that we've got these two problems, and we've got to eradicate the sense of emptiness. The
inherent existence,
right? Get that out first,
right?
And then as you work yourself up the chain, then you get rid of duality. So
okay, so here duality, we're talking about the sense of not exactly duality here. The word non-duality has various meanings. When we talked about non-dual awareness, one of the causes of the bodhisattva, that meant the duality of the two extremes, right? Lacking that. When we talked about right here, when we talked about being distant and cut off, the observer and the object as being non-dual. There's another meaning of non-duality generally in the sutra system, just meaning non-dual awareness is one that is a direct realization of emptiness. It just refers to that. So the problems are, first of all, on the path of seeing, in meditative equipoise, you have a direct realization of emptiness, which is non-dual. You've realized emptiness. But when you arise from that on the path of seeing and on the first 7 grounds, when you arise from that, you see conventionalities. What do I say? Oh, it's only, they all appear to be inherently existent on, all the way through the 7th ground. On the 8th, 9th, and 10th ground, you have no longer any delusions, any klesha, but phenomena still appear to you as being inherently existent because you have not yet eliminated on the 8th, 9th, and 10th grounds. You have not yet eliminated the imprints of the delusions, which is amongst those factors that are called obstructions to omniscience. There are other factors that are obstructions to omniscience also, but the main one here we're talking about is the imprints of delusions. So those imprints of delusions, when you're not in meditative equipoise, they cause phenomena, conventionalities to appear to be inherently existent. Although on the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, you no longer believe that at all. You've eliminated all of the delusions. You know that phenomena are not inherently existent, but they still appear that way. It's just like going to at Christmas, I don't know, when Santa Claus comes down, even though it's Uncle Charlie dressed up as Santa Claus, he still appears like Santa Claus with the beard and everything, right?
So I think from what you've just said, one of my takeaways is that intrinsic existence does not equate to permanent, separate, single entity.
Right. They're different things. So the idea, the Vedic idea of being permanent, partless, and independent, that's how usually we translate in our, when other people translate the 3 factors is slightly different. It's not talking about inherent existence. It's talking about something much grosser, which has been eliminated. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me continue. So, for this is similar to the view of the non-Buddhist Mimansakas, who maintain that when pollutants are exhausted, the mind also comes to cease. The mind too comes to cease. So that's not the case. When you achieve Buddhahood, there is a mind from the, let's say, Lama Tsong Khapa, Chandrakirti, Nagarjuna's interpretation of the Buddha. But some people misinterpret Chandrakirti as saying that the mind ceases then. That's wrong. They claim, these misinformed people, that there is no gnosis, no exalted wisdom during an Arya's meditative equipoise, is also the claim that there is no gnosis during an Arya's meditative equipoise is also similar to that view. So there are some people, in addition to saying that when you become Buddha, the mind ceases, there are others who say that in the meditative equipoise on emptiness, realizing emptiness directly, that there is no wisdom there. There is no gnosis. That's similar to this other kind of misinterpretation that the mind ceases. Diana, are you following? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm following. Don't have any comments.
Okay, good. Just checking. So the claim that there is no gnosis during an Arya's meditative equipoise is also similar to that view. And Jeffrey translates that sentence as saying that there is no wisdom in a superior's meditative equipoise, he translates Arya as superior, is also similar. So there are two different kinds of views here, wrong views that are Lama Tsongkhapa is trying to make clear. It is not the case that when you become Buddha, that your mind ceases. And it is not the case that in meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness, that there is no wisdom, that there is no gnosis. It's the Tibetan word yeshe or Sanskrit jnana, right? It's the deeper kind of wisdom. In the Precious Garland, the Ratnavali, this Nagarjuna's famous text, it states also, therefore, one becomes free by seeing thus. This is how Tutham Jimpa translates. By what means does one see? Conventionally, I say, this is Nagarjuna talking, right? Conventionally, I say by the mind. So Jeffrey translates this a little bit differently, which I think is a better translation. He translates, let's see here. Thereby, those who see thus are liberated. And what does he mean by thus? It comes in the stanza right before that. So as I mentioned before, sometimes to understand the import of the quotations, you sort of have to know the lines right before, the lines right after. So the lines that come right before, this is in verses 363 and 364 in the Precious Garland. So some of 363 is not mentioned in the quotation that Lama Tsongkhapa mentions here. So it begins, thus, attachment to meeting with pleasure and attachment to separating from pain are to be abandoned because they do not inherently exist. Does that make sense? Attachment to meeting with pleasure. Is that one of the meanings of attachment? Yeah, you want to meet, there's a certain kind of attachment to wanting to have pleasure. There's also an attachment to separating from pain. When you have pain, you have a desire, an attachment to be free of that, right? So the verse says, thus attachment to meeting with pleasure and attachment to separating from pain are to be abandoned because they do not inherently exist. And then it says, thereby, which is not, well, maybe that's what Triptan Jimpa is translating as therefore. Thereby, those who see thus are liberated. Those who see thus means those who see that the delusions are not inherently existent. Who sees suchness? By convention, or conventionally, it is said to be the mind. So this is an affirmation. This is kind of like Lama Tsongkhapa giving a quotation that Nagarjuna says that the mind sees, the mind knows. It's not as though in meditative equipoise on emptiness that there is no knowing, there's no gnosis. It is not that when one becomes a Buddha that the mind ceases. There is a mind that knows. Make sense? What do you think? Rachel? Make sense? Yeah. Anyone have doubt? Servesh, I try to get to know people's mannerisms. I'm not sure if he's thinking he had it. Okay. Venerable Pamo, are you there? Maybe not. Okay.
I'm here.
Oh, yeah.
I just needed to find my mic button.
Oh, okay. So it makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Just checking. So then the text continues. Here, in response to the question, through what kind of subjective act does one perceive suchness directly. So in answer to that, Nagarjuna says, it is stated that, it is stated that the mind directly perceives suchness on the conventional level. So in what subjective action does one know suchness? So conventionally, we say that the mind sees suchness directly. Snehi?
Thank you, Venerable George. I actually wanted to go back to the quote you just read about the attachment, and that, even so the two, attachment to pleasure and then to pain, and then it ended with a sentence about that you don't see them as inherently existent or something.
Right.
And that was, I didn't quite follow the conclusion of that.
So the quotation that Lama Tsongkhapa takes from Precious Garland is just one part. It sort of leaves off what came just before that, because as Jimpa translates here, therefore, therefore what? Why are you saying therefore? You said something before, and then you say, as a result of that, therefore. What was that came before? The statement in the Precious Garland on verse 363. So if you have, do I have Jeffrey Hopkins' translation here? If you have Jeffrey Hopkins' translation.
Venerable, I put it in the chat.
Okay, it's on page 142 of Jeffrey Hopkins' translation. It says, thus, attachment to meeting with pleasure and attachment to separating from pain, those are two kinds of attachment, right, are to be abandoned. Is that true? We have to abandon attachment, attachment to wanting pleasure, attachment to wanting to be free of suffering. They are to be abandoned because they do not inherently exist. So they can mean two different things here. Can mean that pleasure and pain do not inherently exist, and also the attachment itself does not inherently exist. Therefore, because nothing inherently exists, or as Jeffrey says, thereby, those who see thus, who see that phenomena do not inherently exist, the objects of our attachment do not inherently exist, the pleasure and pain, and that the subject mind, the attachment itself does not inherently exist. Thereby, those who see thus are liberated. What sees suchness? This is the crucial point that Lama Tsongkhapa is bringing up this quotation for. What sees suchness? What sees thus? Or by what means does one see? Jimpa says, conventionally, the mind. The words I see, I say is not there in the Sanskrit or Tibetan. Jeffrey says, what sees suchness? By convention, or conventionally, it is said to be the mind. So the mind does see suchness in meditative equipoise, right? It knows that. You wouldn't say at that point you're thinking, I am seeing suchness, but the mind does see suchness, does see emptiness, does know emptiness. Okay, together? So here, in response to the question, through what kind of subjective act does one perceive suchness directly? It is stated that the mind directly perceives suchness on the conventional level. Why does it have to say that on the conventional level? What do you think, Ron?
I don't know.
Oh, that's a good answer. That's a good. Sunny, what do you think? Why does it say on the conventional level?
Sorry, Venerable, I don't know.
No, Nadine, you must have an idea.
Because on the ultimate level, the mind does not inherently exist.
Yeah, yeah, and the ultimate level. So if you talk about the ultimate, that means in ultimate reality, nothing exists, right? Okay. So it is stated that the mind directly perceives suchness on the conventional level. So that means what we're talking about. You know, does the mind in meditative equipoise know emptiness? Yes. Conventionally, yes. Does when one becomes a Buddha, does one's wisdom still exist? Yes. Conventionally, yes. Ultimately, it doesn't exist, but conventionally it does. So then, in the praise to the ultimate expanse, which is one of Nagarjuna's, amongst Nagarjuna's collections of praises, it's called the Dharma Datu. You know, have you heard the word Dharma Datu? David, what does Dharma Datu mean?
I'm sorry, I thought you asked, did I hear the word Dharma Datu? And I was agreeing, I have heard of that, but
yeah. So there are lots of different meanings. So when we talk about in our low rig class earlier, those of you who took low rig and tenets and so forth, we talk about all impermanent phenomena can be found in what? The 5 skandhas, right? When the Buddha talked about how to elaborate phenomena, he talked about various divisions. You talked about the 5 skandhas, the 12 entrances, or ayatana, Tibetan we say keche, and the 18 dhatus. So all impermanent phenomena can be found in the 5 skandhas. All forms can be found in the rupa skandha, the form aggregate, and all of the mental, everything other than form, which is mind and non-compositional factors, can be found in the other of the 5 aggregates. All phenomena can be found in the 12 entrances and the 18 dhatu. So what are the 18 dhatu? When we talk about the 6 objects of the 6 minds, that is visual forms, sounds, smells, tastes, tactile objects, and objects of mind. So the objects of mind are in that presentation are called Dharma Datu. You know, the objects that are the elements that are called Dharma Datu. But Dharma Datu also means is a synonym for emptiness. Although when you talk about the 18 dhatus, when you talk about the 18 elements, Dharma Datu can include other things. Generally, Dharma Datu means one of the particular things that only mental consciousness can perceive is emptiness. So Dharma Datu can mean emptiness. That's what's meant here. So the praise of emptiness, you could say Dharma Datu's Dava. So in that, it says, it is just as body armor is cleansed by fire. Do you clean your body armor with fire? So what is this talking about? So in ancient times, if there's blood and gore on your body armor, you could clean that off by putting it in the fire, not so hot that melts the armor, but burns up all of the gunk on it, right? Do you do that? When you have something, usually we put things in the dishwasher, right? You know, if there's gunk on the pan or something like that, you put it in the dishwasher. If you put it in the oven, if you heated it up just before the glass melts, probably, you know, the other stuff would burn up too. But here's talking about armor. So the quotation is like this. It is just as body armor is cleansed by fire. For when armor tainted by all kinds of stains is placed in a blazing fire, its stains are burned, but not the armor. So that's very relevant to what we're saying here. What's the fire? The fire of wisdom, realizing emptiness, that burns up the delusions, the klesha, and their seeds, and eventually will burn up the imprints, right? But it doesn't destroy the mind. The mind is not destroyed. That's kind of like the armor. Likewise, with this luminous mind ridden with stains born of desire, the fire of gnosis, the fire of wisdom, wisdom fire, burns the stains, but not the luminous mind itself, not the clear light nature mind itself. Make sense? Okay. So interestingly, Jeffrey translates a little different. He says, when a metal garment which has become stained with contaminations and is to be cleansed by fire is put in fire, its stains are burned, but it is not. That more or less agrees. Then he says, so with regard to the mind of clear light, which has the stains of desire and so forth, its stains are burned by wisdom's fire, but clear light, it's such, but not clear light, it's suchness. Okay. When we talk about, in our meditation at the beginning of class, we talk about the conventional clear light nature of mind. What's the ultimate clear light nature of the mind? Christian, do you know? Don, what's the ultimate clear light nature of the mind?
Emptiness of our mind, our Buddha nature.
Yeah, that's what's called the non-abiding Buddha nature. So there's two kinds of Buddha nature, right? The developmental Buddha nature, which is when we talk about the conventional clear light nature of the mind, that the mind is not stained by the objects, right? You know, by the delusions and so forth. They can exit, they can enter and so forth. That there's no obstruction in the mind. But the ultimate clear light nature of mind means the emptiness of the mind. That's what's called the non-abiding Buddha nature. So the text continues, the above states that just as when chainmail armor is placed in fire, you know what chainmail is? I don't mean the letter that you got from your friend who said they got it from another friend. Isn't that called chainmail? Can't remember. Chainmail means like the armor that's woven together, right? Have you seen the people that went on the Crusades and so forth? That's how he translates, but it's not exactly right. The above states that just as when chainmail armor is placed in fire, the fire burns off the stains, but not the armor itself. Actually, Jeffrey, it's interesting what this means. It says, Jeffrey says, when a dirty garment woven from threads of stone, it doesn't say chainmail. There's maybe in ancient India there was something that later the Crusaders had that we call chainmail. But if you were to make a garment woven from threads of stone, when that is put in fire, its stains are burned away, but not the garment. So anyway, it's talking about the same thing. If you have something that's impervious to fire, like chainmail, of course, if the fire is hot enough, it'll melt the chainmail. Or if you have a garment made of stone, threads, maybe like asbestos or something like that. If you put that in fire, all of the other stuff will be burned away, any stains on it, but the garment will not. Likewise, when the stains of the mind are burned off by the fire of wisdom, only the stains are burned. The luminous mind is not destroyed, is not incinerated. Make sense? No problem there, right? Then the text continues. The gnosis of meditative equipoise, the wisdom of meditative equipoise of Arya Bodhisattvas, and the gnosis of meditative equipoise of Arya Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas are equal when it comes to realizing the ultimate nature of things directly, without any taint from the imprints of ignorance. How come they don't have, don't they still have the, say, if you're not yet a Buddha, you're an Arya Bodhisattva, don't they still have the imprints of ignorance? Because when they rise from meditative equipoise, phenomena appear to be inherently existent, right? They still have the imprints. Here it says the gnosis of meditative equipoise of Arya Bodhisattvas and the gnosis of meditative equipoise of Arya Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas are equal when it comes to realizing the ultimate nature of things directly, without any taint from the imprints of ignorance. Why don't they have any taint from the imprints of ignorance? They still have the imprints of ignorance, don't they?
They're still a meditative equipoise.
Yeah. But it says when they're equal when it comes to realizing the ultimate nature of things directly, without any taint from the imprints of ignorance. Why doesn't, sorry, Tendra?
It's not manifest during meditative equipoise?
Well, the imprints are never manifest. Imprints are by nature, they're sort of unmanifest. But because of the fact that what you are perceiving in the meditative equipoise is only ultimate truth, not conventional truth. All that you are perceiving is emptiness. Emptiness is called ultimate truth. You know, when we talk about conventional truth, Jeffrey Hopkins coined this phrase, truth for a jerk. Have you heard that expression before? It's kind of like what Democrats might say the Republicans consider truth, you know, that, you know, the vaccines don't work, that climate change is not happening, and so forth. It's truth for a jerk. Excuse me. So conventionalities don't appear in the meditative equipoise directly realizing emptiness. There's no conventional phenomena appearing. So even though the imprints of ignorance are there, they don't cause that emptiness to be inherited, to appear as inherently existent. The imprints of ignorance only cause conventional phenomena to appear to be inherently existent. Are we on the same page? Snehi, what do you think?
I was actually, puzzled by where it says that for all three groups, it's equal. They're realizing the ultimate nature of things directly. And I had always thought that, the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas don't have the same definition of emptiness that the Bodhisattvas do, or at least Prasangika Bodhisattvas.
So we actually mentioned this before, and we'll mention it again. It'll be coming. Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, Buddhapalita, and Lama Tsongkhapa are all saying that in order to achieve the Arya state of a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha, in order for them to become Arhats, they have to realize emptiness directly, the same emptiness that the Bodhisattvas realize. Remember, we were talking earlier about, according to their written books and the tenets that we see, they say that you can achieve the Arya state of a Shravaka or Pratika Buddha, and you can achieve nirvana by realizing the selflessness of persons, the lack of a person being self-supporting, substantially existent. Prasangika says, no, they have to realize the emptiness of persons. They have to realize the emptiness of all phenomena, in the sense that phenomena are not inherently existent. So that's not stated generally openly in their tenets, in the Hinayana tenets, the Theravada tenets. There's some oblique suggestion to that, as we'll see when in some of the sutras that are common to the Pali Canon, they say that that form is like foam, and feelings are like a plantain tree, and so forth. And in other words, they have no substantial inherent existence. There's some allusions to that. But in general, in order to achieve the Arya state, say the gnosis of meditative equipoise of Arya Bodhisattvas, as realizing emptiness directly, and the gnosis of meditative equipoise of Arya Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, also realizing emptiness of inherent existence directly, they're equal when it comes to realizing the ultimate nature of things directly, without any taint from the imprints of ignorance. So the point here I'm making about the last phrase there, without any taints from the imprints of ignorance, those imprints of ignorance still exist in their minds, because the bodhisattvas are not yet Buddhas. The the Arya Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas still have appearance of inherent existence when they're not in meditative equipoise. But when they're in meditative equipoise, no conventional phenomena is appearing to them, only ultimate truth. All phenomena are either conventional truths or ultimate truths. If they're conventional truths for both of these individuals, or all three of these individuals, Arya Bodhisattvas, Arya Shravakas, and Pratika Buddhas, if conventional truths appear to them, they appear to them as inherently existent due to the imprints of ignorance. But when ultimate truths appear to them, like in meditative equipoise on emptiness, the imprints of ignorance has no effect on ultimate truth. So although the imprints of ignorance are there, they don't have any foothold when you're realizing emptiness. I think Kristen is kind of nodding, Nadine is nodding. Makes sense? Yeah, okay. Doris also says makes sense. Tendrin, makes sense? Suvash? Karen and David? You're in different rooms, I see. Karen's on the veranda, David's in the inside. Sean,
I
does it
have a
make
question,
sense?
George.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
In the Abhisamayamkara, it says it hears that vehicle realizes emptiness of persons, Pratika Buddhas, emptiness of inherent existence, of duality.
Right.
Duality and Bodhisattva's inherent existence.
Right.
We're saying you're saying now that they have the same view of emptiness.
Right. So the Abhisamayalankara, which Venerable Sanghya Khandro is teaching the 4th chapter of, right? Doris, are you taking that class? Yeah. So Abhisamayalankara is written from the, I think generally from the Yogacara Svatantrika point of view, not from the Prasangika point of view. So of the various tenets, you have the Hinayana tenets, Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, right? Mahayana tenets, you have Chittamatra, also called Yogacara, and then you have the Madhyamaka, which is broken up into the Svatantrika Madhyamaka and the Prasangika. We're only talking here about from the Prasangika point of view. from the lower Madhyamaka schools, the Svatantrika, you have something, you have the Sautrantika Svatantrika and the Yogacara Svatantrika, right? So Abhisamaya Alamkara seems to be mainly, for the most part, talking about, these different realizations. The Shravakas realize the selflessness of persons. The Pratika Buddhas realize the sort of the Yogacara view of non-duality, that phenomena and say the object and the consciousness perceiving it come from the same seed, so they're non-dual in that sense. They're talking about it from the Yogacara Svatantrika point of view. It is mentioned, though, Kedrupje and other lamas who investigated said there are some indications in the Abhisamaya Alamkara that its ultimate viewpoint is actually prasangika, but it's what we call skillful means, right? In order to lead people to the correct view of emptiness, sometimes lower views are given prominence and extolled as the correct view in order to bring people up to that level, like walking up the rungs of a ladder or walking up the steps of a stairway. Okay, so you're right in that Abhisamaya Alamkara does talk about these various views. In fact, they talk about three vehicles, three final vehicles. You'll end up as a Shravaka Arhat or a Pratika Buddha Arhat or as a Buddha. But from certain indications in the text, it does accept that there is ekayana, one final vehicle, that they will all achieve enlightenment. Okay, so the gnosis of meditative equipoise of Arya Bodhisattvas and the gnosis of meditative equipoise of Arya Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas are equal when it comes to realizing the ultimate nature of things directly, without any taint from the imprints of ignorance. The reason one type of gnosis is defined as an Arya Bodhisattva, ground, right? Path of seeing, onward, they're all grounds. While the other is not, the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, they're still realizing the same emptiness. They're not called Bodhisattva grounds. Has come under, the reason one type of gnosis is defined as an Arya Bodhisattva ground, while the other is not, is due to the fact that whether one has come under the sway of great compassion and whether one is endowed with the power of the 1,200 sets of qualities. This is the first mention of 1,200 sets of qualities, or the 100 sets of 12 qualities might be better put. So what is this talking about? So the Arya Shravakas and the Arya Pratika Buddhas on the path of seeing and on their path of meditation, they're not called Bodhisattva grounds, right? Why? They realize the same emptiness that the Bodhisattvas are realizing, but they don't have bodhicitta, they don't have great compassion, and they are not under the sway of great compassion or under the influence, sort of like when we say shenwang, means under the influence of others. So like the Bodhisattvas have no choice. They are under the influence of compassion, so they work for sentient beings all the time to achieve enlightenment for their benefit. So the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas don't have that, and they don't have these 100 sets of 12 qualities. Did I put them here? Yeah, 12 sets of 100 qualities. So we'll mention that in a minute. Furthermore, as mentioned earlier, where was it mentioned earlier? If you look on page in your book, pages 33 to 34 of Lama Tsongkhapa's translation, there what he's talking about is what is mentioned earlier is this sentence or this paragraph, entering the middle way from the perspective of the vast aspect of the path is as follows. In accordance with the tradition of the noble Nagarjuna, abiding in the two vehicles of Hinayana and Mahayana is not distinguished based on whether one possesses wisdom realizing the utterly profound truth of suchness. They both realize the, truth of suchness or emptiness, right? Furthermore, although no distinctive features of the vast path of the Mahayana, besides the dimension of the profound, are presented in fundamental wisdom. Fundamental wisdom doesn't talk about the method side, the vast side, the extensive side, other than the fact that the bodhisattvas learn numberless reasonings to establish emptiness, which is a sort of a conventional phenomena. That work, Fundamental Wisdom, was composed from the Mahayana standpoint within the division of Mahayana and Hinayana, because the extensive presentation of the selflessness of phenomena by a profuse or great number of variety of reasonings is done only in the Mahayana training. And this is how the presentation is made in Fundamental Wisdom. The commentary makes this point very clearly. This was in Lama Tsongkhapa's text, talking about how the Fundamental Wisdom engages the vast aspect or the extensive aspect of the path. Generally, it's always talking about emptiness, right? But the fact that it talks about emptiness from many, many different logical reasonings that the Hinayana practitioners don't need. They mainly just need one reasoning, because they're going to achieve arhatship in 14 lives, whereas the bodhisattvas have to remain in cyclic existence for maybe 3 countless great eons if they don't practice the tantric path. So they need many, many different reasonings. That it presents the Mahayana is indeed correct, Fundamental Wisdom, for it does so to elucidate the selflessness of phenomena. And the intention of Nagarjuna is to explain such selflessness in an extensive manner as opposed to in the Shravaka vehicle, the selflessness of phenomena is confined only to brief illustrations. I will explore this point further in another section. Now we are in that section. This was back in, what did I say, page? What did I say?
34.
Page 34, right? If you look in your text, you can find 33 and 34. So now we've reached that section that he was alluding to earlier. So here it says, furthermore, as mentioned earlier, page 33 and 34, there is a tremendous difference between them, Mahayana and Hinayana, in terms of whether during the paths of accumulation and path of preparation, one has enhanced one's intelligence in relation to the truth of the 2 types of selflessness through employing limitless forms of reasoning. So even on the path of accumulation and path of preparation, bodhisattvas are learning many different types of reasonings to establish emptiness. Whereas in the Hinayana, the reasonings are limited to just very brief illustrations, because the bodhisattvas have to remain in cyclic existence for so much longer. Make sense? Sarvash, what do you think? You're looking at one screen. Your camera is in a different direction. Okay. Ron, make sense? Yeah, okay. Sunny? You're not lost? You're okay? Rachel? That looks too sage. Come on, Rachel, what do you think? You following?
I'm very sleepy, George. I'm sorry,
Okay.
but I'm following as best I can.
Okay, good. Rachel's teaching. How many kids now?
223 each pretty much each day.
I'd be tired too if I had to teach one kid. Okay. So furthermore, as mentioned earlier, so forth and so on. So the Bodhisattva, the Mahayana is distinguished from the Hinayana, not from the point of view of realizing emptiness. The Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas realize emptiness correctly, but the Bodhisattva's understanding is enhanced by so many different, the availability of so many different reasonings that they've studied, because in dealing with the world, for 3 countless great eons, they have to know the emptiness of coming and going, the emptiness of the aggregates, they have to know the emptiness of the 12 links, emptiness of so many different things that you find in fundamental wisdom in all of its different chapters. So that would not be found in the Hinayana vehicle. Okay. So the phrase from the commentary cited above, when divided in terms of facets or parts, remember we talked about the various bhumis are divided, sort of like the continuity of gnosis of the Bodhisattva divided into parts or facets. That phrase means that it is one and the same uncontaminated gnosis. So let's say the Mississippi River. Where does the Mississippi River begin? Do you know, Diana? You're not a Midwesterner, but
I've been living here and now I'm forgetting the name of the park in northern Minnesota, but yeah, far northern Minnesota.
Somewhere up there, up in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So it goes down and then it goes down through Minnesota and Illinois and Iowa, down into to Mississippi, I guess. Is it good? Is that why it's called Mississippi? So that's one long thing, right? So what did it say here? The phrase, when divided in terms of parts or facets, means that it is one and the same uncontaminated gnosis. So one and the same Mississippi River, which is the whole, that is being differentiated in terms of stages or parts, right? The part up in Minnesota, the part in Illinois, Iowa, and so forth. With the earlier and latter parts becoming the individual parts or individual facets. These are referred to as grounds, right? So the different parts of that gnosis of the Bodhisattva are called grounds because they serve as the locus or foundation or basis for the Bodhisattva's qualities. Remember, we talked about the word bhumi. Bhumi means, as Sarvesh mentioned also, and Shankar said, in India, we use bhumi, just mean the ground, the earth, the bhumi. So it's called, the Bodhisattva grounds are called bhumis because they act like the earth acts as the basis for the seed to grow from it. So these bhumis act as the locus or basis for the Bodhisattva's qualities. Right? Hopkins, instead of saying locus or basis, Hopkins says source or base for the Bodhisattva's qualities. Locus doesn't make a lot of sense to me. They resemble the ground in this sense, and hence the epithet ground, the name ground, is given to them because they act as the basis, the foundation for developing of qualities. These statements indicate that all 10 ultimate grounds are to be posited on the basis of non-conceptual gnosis alone. All 10 ultimate grounds are to be posited on the basis of non-conceptual gnosis alone, sort of the continuity of that. Although they are all equal in being non-conceptual gnosis, or gnosises, gnosi, although they are all equal in being non-conceptual gnosis, the manner in which the grounds, such as the first ground, the perfect joy or the joyous, are defined as distinct grounds is by means of the following four features. So the grounds, although they're all non-conceptual gnosis, ultimate gnosis, they are distinct grounds. They are defined as distinct grounds by means of the following four features. The first feature is the first distinctive feature arises on the basis of progressive increment in the number of qualities such that there exists the set of 12 qualities in 100-fold on the first ground, the set of 12 in 1,000-fold on the second, and so on. These will be described below. Again, like that earlier, it said, it will be explained later. Okay, so what is this talking about? So what are these 12? I'll mention them now. This is reading from how Jeffrey translates in the notes in his text. The first feature is seeing 100 Buddhas in one instant. So a bodhisattva on the first ground can see 100 Buddhas in one instant. What does that mean? It doesn't mean like 100 pictures of Buddhas. Actually can see, maybe through his clairvoyance or through going to the Pure Lands, 100 Buddhas in one instant. On the second ground Bodhisattva, Arya Bodhisattva, would be able to see 1,000 Buddhas in an instant, and it keeps on going up from there. So the first quality is seeing 100 Buddhas in one instant. Second quality is receiving the blessings of 100 Buddhas. Having them influence one's mind in one instant. Third quality is going to 100 Buddha lands, Buddha realms. Third is illuminating 100 lands. Thupten Jinpa has a translation in one of the notes a little bit further on. I think note 118, he has his own translation of these. Number 5, the fifth one is vibrating 100 worldly realms. Some of these others sound relatively, understandable when it says illuminating 100 lands. Makes sense. Different realms. His mind can come and illuminate them in some way. Here, vibrating them, it's not quite clear what's meant. I've asked some of my Dharma colleagues if they've ever heard, and no one's ever heard what that means. Sort of like, maybe in one sense, have you ever heard what happens when someone develops bodhicitta? Venerable Tendra, do you know?
Earth shake?
Yeah. They say sometimes when in the Bodhisattva ceremony, they say, here we are in Bodh Gaya, and we're giving the Bodhisattva vows, and in some other world systems, if someone develops bodhicitta now, that can shake. So sometimes by the power of bodhicitta can cause some kind of earthquake or something shaking in another land, but I'm not sure if that's what's meant here. Sixth is living for 100 eons. Who is it? Jared Kushner said he wants to live. What did you hear about that? Wants to live forever. He wants to maybe have his body frozen so that he can live forever. Generally, Buddhism, we say that generally we'll all have lifespans until you reach enlightenment, right? Certain lifespans. The Bodhisattva on the first bhumi can live, if they so desire, for 100 eons. Jared Kushner, take note. You should become a bodhisattva. Seventh, seeing with true wisdom the past and future of 100 eons. So when we talk about clairvoyance, to see past and future lives, right? You can develop that clairvoyance even before entering the path. You know, Mahayana path or Hinayana path. You can develop clairvoyance by having a union of tranquil abiding and penetrative insight. And you can develop the, certain qualities like divine eye and so forth to know past and future. So bodhisattva on the first bhumi can see with true wisdom the past and future of 100 eons. So for us, a first bhumi bodhisattva is definitely indistinguishable from Buddha. They know what's happened 100 eons in the past, and they know what will happen 100 eons in the future. Eighth one, entering into and rising from 100 samadhis, meditative stabilizations. So in one instant, they can enter into 100 samadhis and exit from them. Generally, it's very difficult to enter into meditative stabilizations and exit from them, but they could do 100 in one instant. Ninth, opening 100 doors of doctrine. Do you know what that means? Richard, do you know what that means? Opening 100 doors of the Dharma?
I can guess, but I don't know.
What was your guess?
My guess is that it's a way that it's saying that you can explain the Dharma in 100 different ways, so that you have the ability to speak to different people in ways that they can understand.
I think that's pretty close. Yeah. So opening the door of Dharma. So for instance, when one gives Dharma teachings to people who have not heard them before, you're opening the door of the Dharma. It's like, oh, look at that room. There's talking about the 12 links or, Lojong or something like that. Ripening 100, 10th one, ripening 100 sentient beings. So opening the door of Dharma is one thing, maybe explaining things that people have not heard before, and then ripening ripening 100 sentient beings. So when we talk about leading sentient beings to higher, to liberation and enlightenment, what you're doing is you're ripening their mind streams to be able to make those realizations. So the first level bodhisattva can ripen 100 sentient beings in one instant. The 11th quality is emanating 100 versions of one's own body. Would you like to be able to do that? So that with psychic powers, so Rachel then could have a student ratio of 2 students to each one of her bodies, okay? And then the 12th quality is surrounding each of those emanations with 100 bodies, with 100 bodhisattvas. Oh, sorry, surrounding each of those 100 bodies that you've emanated, you would each have a retinue of 100 bodhisattvas who are your own emanations. So, for instance, Guru Shakyamuni, it said that in certain way of understanding, all of the Buddhas and all of the bodhisattvas who were his disciples were actually his own emanations, right? And they had their own disciples, right? Which were all emanations of the Buddha. So the text says, the first distinctive feature arises on the basis of progressive increment in the number of qualities, such that there exists the 12 qualities in 100-fold on the first ground, the set of 12 qualities in 1,000-fold on the second, and so forth. So on the various grounds going above that, so there's 100 on the first, 1,000 on the second, 100,000 on the third, 100 times 10 million on the fourth, 1,000 times 10 million on the fifth, 100,000, 10 million on the sixth, the seventh, 100,000 times 10 trillion. On the 8th bhumi, a bodhisattva would have these 12 qualities, a number equal to the particles of 1 billion worlds. On the 9th bhumi, the number equal to the particles of 10 million billion worlds. On the 10th bhumi, a number equal to the particles of an inexpressible number of Buddha lands. So, like, do all of these things, their ability to see the past and the future increases and so forth. These will be described below. The second distinctive feature pertains to the ever-increasing enhancement of excellent power. Although some, and here he's referring to Jayananda again, describe this in terms of shaking 100 realms, 1,000 realms, and so on, this ability is included in the increment of qualities that we mentioned first. Now we're talking about the second quality, the ever-increasing enhancement. It thus appears to pertain instead to the ever-increasing power of the individual grounds, their power to cleanse pollutants and traverse the path. The third quality, what are we talking about here? The following 4 features. Third feature, the third pertains to the feature of excellence with respect to the perfections. Excellence in the perfection of generosity on the first ground. Second ground, what's on the second ground? Perfection of morality, and so forth. Each of the grounds have a particular feature of excellence. They have an excellent practice of generosity on the first ground, morality on the second ground, patience on the third ground, enthusiastic perseverance on the fourth ground, concentration on the fifth ground, prajna on the sixth ground, and so forth. The fourth distinctive feature pertains to the ever-enhancing fruitional effects. This might mean, Lama Tsongkhapa says, on the first ground, being born as a monarch that reigns over the earth. On the second ground, being born as a monarch that reigns over the 4 continents, and so forth. So this is talking about higher and higher increase of births of fruition. So when we talk about rebirth, you may remember from tenets and some of our other classes, we say there are 4 kind of karmic results, right? The fruitional result or the maturation result, that's what's being talked about here. There's the result similar to the cause as an action, the result similar to the cause as an experience, and the environmental results. Those are the 4 kinds of karmic results. So here it's talking about the maturation. On the first ground, birth as a king ruling Jambudvipa, the earth, or India, if you took this sort of the earlier kind of view. On the second, a king ruling all 4 continents. On the third, a king ruling the land of the 33. That's one of the desire realm heavens, right? On the fourth, ruling the land without combat, which is also one of the desire realm, God realms. The fifth, the joyous land, Tushita, which is in the desire realm. The sixth, on the sixth ground, being born as a king ruling the land of liking emanation. On the seventh, controlling others' emanations. On the eighth, as a great Brahma, Lord of 1,000 worlds. So the Brahma realm is now in the form realm, right? On the ninth, great Brahma, Lord of 1,000,000 worlds. On the 10th, as Devaputra Mahashvara of the highest land. So these are the various qualities that the enhancing, what are it called? Although they are all equal in being non-conceptual gnosis, these grounds, the matter in which the grounds such as perfect joy, the joyous, the first ground, are defined as distinct grounds is by means of the following 4 features. So they're all, they all have this these increasing kind of qualities. Okay. Make sense? Okay, so we're going to stop there. So any questions? How are we doing?
I have a question, Jordan.
Yes, done.
Back to the Abhisamaya car and the three vehicles, the three realizations. If I'm say a Vaibhashika practitioner, I've been taught that I'm good at that, not about the emptiness of phenomena, but just of persons. When I reach the path of seeing, and I get up and I have the same realizations as the Prasangika described, if the subsequent attainment after that meditation, what am I feeling?
So it would be long before you wouldn't reach the path of seeing with the Vaibhashika view, right? If a Shravaka had been a practitioner, they've developed renunciation, so they've entered the Hinayana path on the basis of their Hinayana understanding. So on the path of accumulation, they would try to meditate on selflessness, and it would help them. They would subdue some gross emotions, because all of these, even the artificial intellectual obstructions that are eliminated in the path of seeing, like the belief in that the emptiness of a permanent, partless, and independent person, even that would, make their mind more calm. But they would, they wouldn't even reach the path of preparation unless they had reached a correct understanding of emptiness somewhere along the line. So you can imagine it might be many years they would be meditating, maybe reading the sutras and so forth, and they would run across illusions to something more than the emptiness of a self-supporting, substantially existent person. When we reach the section in the text that talks, there's a whole section that Lama Tsongkhapa adds to that is not found in the Madhyamaka Vatara. There are many sections that he adds when he explains how the hearers and solitary realizers must realize emptiness. So at that point, you would be able to understand they must come across these teachings either through their own reading or maybe by the inspiration of the Buddhas when they're meditating, and that they would go deeper into those, deeper into their understanding of what selflessness means, more than what is found in the Vaibhashika or Sautrantika tenets. Okay. Anyone else have a question? Oh, that's Daniel, Galaxy A6. Okay, that was Daniel. Okay. Didn't know who that was. Palmo, Violet, Sheila, anyone of you have questions? I can see other people are more or less satisfied. Okay. So we're going to do some dedication prayers. Sunny, if you'd like to put up. So remembering that we've created, with motivation at the beginning, during this class, we've created some virtuous karma. We've created merits. Actually, the text doesn't say due to these merits, it says due to these virtues. So that can be the virtues of, that are merits, and the virtues that are, accumulation of wisdom. Due to these virtues, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all beings, all migrators, without exception, into that enlightened state. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. And then the long life prayers. Just above, no, just below that, I think. No. Is that it? No. Go down, 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 down. Further. Further, further. Further, further. There we go. So for Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you who uphold Shakyamuni's moral code, serving as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's, Lama Tsongkhapa's victorious doctrine, masterfully accomplishing magnificent prayers, honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. And finally, to all of our teachers, Dalai Lama and so forth, you are eyes for viewing all of the infinite scriptures, supreme gateways for the fortunate beings traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, moved by love, all illuminating spiritual friends. Please live a long and stable life. So thank you for your patience. Hope to see you next week. I think some people will watch the video. Is it Sheila? If you could get me the link for the Zoom recording. A couple of people I know that Jennifer was here for a while, but maybe they had to leave. Paul and Shanka and some other people have missed. So see you next week. Sheila's put her thumb up. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Venerable.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you all for your patience.
George.
Thank you,
Endurance.
Venerable George.
Thank you, Sunny.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Sunny.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sonny.
Take care, everyone.
You too.
you.
Bye. Bye.